Do you want to learn about God's kingdom mission across the globe? Is your ultimate goal as a follower of Jesus to lead others to Him, but you aren't sure how to do that? Then I'm so glad you're joining us today. I'm your host, Allison Henry, and welcome to the Follow Me podcast. We hope to share what God is doing through missionaries and ministries throughout the world and give discipleship and evangelism tips so you can follow Christ and His command to spread the gospel. All right, we are back with Jake Newton, and this time we're going to dive into just a memory, a time where the Lord really pressed upon him, showed His presence, or challenged him. And I'm looking forward to hear what Jake has to share with us. And then, of course, we will get to hear some encouragement from him on how to disciple or tips for discipleship and evangelism. So, Jake, when did the Lord challenge you?
Yeah. I think there's a few that just kind of immediately jump to mind. Not that there's not little challenges, in every day, but I guess some of the bigger, more, seasonal, longer stretches of just, challenging and opportunities to, persevere. So my junior year of college, when I really just started to take my faith more serious, I mentioned on the previous episode that felt called by the Lord to start a Bible study with the guys on the baseball team. And I don't know what I expected, but in my mind, it was just, I invite guys and maybe they show up, maybe they don't. I kind of got put through the ringer, I guess, at least for a couple of weeks, where some guys, were legitimately, kind of ticked off that this was something that I was, throwing at everyone. Other guys just thought it was weird because here I am, totally different person. Like, what changed? So just, guys maybe ragging on me a little more than what they usually would. I just remember feeling pretty, isolated, because that was really my main community. I had went on this retreat with Cru, and, I had met some people, but still, the guys I spent every day of my life for the past 3 years, these were the guys that I still considered my primary community. And that's why I was just so desperate for them to hear about what Jesus has done for them. That there was a stretch of time where I just felt like all my closest friends kind of turned their backs on me, or people who said they were friends. I remember people, it seemed like almost every time I would get close with someone in Cru, or who we had like common understanding about our faith, they would just like leave. They would transfer. It was the weirdest thing. It was like 4 for 4. It was crazy. I'm like, is this a me thing? Are all these people like just like running away? And so I just feel like that was a tough season. Like, not feeling, super invested in community outside of a Bible study here, and meeting with the guy who was discipling me at the time, once a week. And so it was tough. I definitely felt like I was challenged, but what was cool was that summer I went on summer mission with Cru, and that was in Slovenia at the time. I was there for 6 weeks, and that was, I think, exactly what I'd been missing. That type of community. Obviously, that's not the norm, but after being deprived of community for almost a year, and then getting to experience it like that every day for 6 weeks, that gave me a pretty good picture of what I wanted to come back to campus and try to see God do. So
Yeah. So in that time, in that year, what got you through? How did the Lord encourage you in that period of isolation, as you stated, and give you hope still for what was going to happen in the future?
yeah, well, it was around that time that I learned how to read. Not actually, but kind of like because I just remember in high school I never read. In college, like I never read. It's bad, but um, yeah, I just remember the guy I was meeting with at the time who was on staff. He just I don't know, somehow he knew like I had a good memory, or if I would happen to read something, like would kind of retain it. And so he actually challenged me. He's like, why aren't you reading? I was like, what do you mean? Why am I not reading? Like, why would I read? And he's he just told me, he's like, well, one, it helps us in our relationship with the Lord. But two, if you're really trying to lead other people, you have to read. Like you cannot be a leader and not a reader. And I just kind of took that to heart, and it gave me something. I mean, yeah, to feel it was cool. I started like reading my Bible at the same time every morning. And what started out as just me reading my Bible at the same time every morning. By the end of the year, we had, I want to say, around like 12 students coming out every morning, reading the Bible together, talking about, and that was like totally organic. Like it wasn't like structured or anything like that. I think that's one of the awesome things about campus ministry, especially for students. Like once they really start to own it, some of the coolest stuff that happens isn't put on from the top down. Like it's student led. Yeah, just a little side note, but yeah, big thing reading. Yeah, super thankful that I learned how to do that at one point and started doing it 20 years later.
Were there any particular like Bible verses or books that you remember standing out?
Yeah, I mean, specifically, I mean, especially during that time, like just the passage in First Corinthians, it talks about, it's First Corinthians 15:58. Therefore, my brothers, be steadfast, immovable, always excelling in the work of the Lord, knowing that your labor in the Lord is not in vain. Um, yeah, I just had to believe that. Um, it's not something that you can visibly see and track progress every day. It's not, but I just had to believe that it's not in vain. And I might, there came a point where I also had to believe like I might never see any of the fruit from this, and there might be fruit, that other people get to see, and that's okay too. Just yeah. So um, I would say that for sure. But then as far as books, yeah, I started reading. I think guys like John Piper really expanded my view of God. Initially, I was like, wow, these people have a lot to say about God. Read some C.S. Lewis because like everyone talks about C.S. Lewis, so why not read him? And yeah, just honestly, like quite a few evangelism books too. Just yeah, switching. I felt like there was a conscious switch where it's like I've always been a people person, but now I'm like an evangelistic person, like always looking for an opportunity to like strike up a conversation and see where it goes. Yeah, that's another thing I found. I'm like, it's pretty easy to talk about spiritual things if you just like get to the point. But that can be hard to do.
Yeah. Well, and I think whenever you were telling your story, the verse, I'm not ashamed of the gospel, and then in Romans 5, when it's saying this hope does not put us to shame, like our culture kind of has this idea a lot of times that Jesus isn't cool. And so when we're isolated or like you're pursuing ministry and people aren't excited about it, like there's this idea that, well, that's not cool, but this is. But really, following Jesus is cool. Like the way that he ends up filling you and the community you get, people just don't realize the life that it gives you. And so there's just such competing pictures. So you're isolated and you're like, wow, okay, well, I'm really alone. People aren't like people are being standoffish. They think I'm really weird.
Yeah.
What's going on? But then once you start to get into the word and get into the right community, you're like, this isn't weird at all. This is awesome. Like
Yeah.
filling you in a completely different way. And so there's really not supposed to be any shame attached to it. Once you know the heart of it and the truth of it, that's you realize that there is no shame in it. Like it is just hope. So that's kind of what came to mind whenever I heard that part of your story, because I've heard things like that and felt that myself so many times. All right, Jake. So I know that you said you had a few. So what's another time that the Lord really challenged you and drew you closer to him?
Yeah. So, I mentioned kind of the season of coming into graduation and feeling like, oh man, maybe I made the wrong decision. But I guess to further plant that lie in my head, Gabrielle and I were dating at the time. And when we graduated college, we both went to separate colleges. Um, I thought at least like this Christian girl is going to be thrilled that I'm going into full time ministry, and she wasn't. And so um, she had yeah got her MBA. She did read in college. Good for her. Um, and she was like, yeah, I'm going to Columbus and I'm going to work in the corporate world. And so I really don't feel like God's calling us in the same directions. And so I think we should just cut things off here. And so, yeah, she dumped me. And that's all. I mean, breakups are always hard. But I think for me, just living with this, I guess, false state of mind that, oh, relationships like those won't be hard when you're a Christian and you're going into full-time ministry. And like it's almost a guaranteed, like if you're in ministry you get married. And it's just, yeah, a lie that I think comes from a lot of places. One, it's a genuine and a good desire to like be in a relationship, but I thought that it was like totally over. And I was thinking like, yeah, man, that's tough, but God, I still really do feel like this is what you called me to. And so I just remember kind of mentally shutting that door, and doing what I could to, look ahead, because now I'm in this in between these summer months where, yeah, we're not in school. There isn't a whole lot of community, things like that. And God just really used that season as a time for me to just continually ask myself, is this something like I want to do? Is this something I want to do? And each step of the way, I feel like God just continued to affirm, yeah, like this is what I have for you. Um, so then like 4 months later, Gabrielle reached back out, said that she thought God was calling her into full-time ministry. And then we got married.
Immediately got married. No.
Yeah, not, it was, yeah, I think we started dating again. I think probably got engaged after 6 months or so. And then, yeah, got married the following summer.
couple episodes ago, she was telling her side of that story. So it's really cool to hear the parallels, like right after one another.
Yeah.
And to hear how you guys were both mulling over things, but in different ways almost. You're like, am I supposed to be here? And she was like, am I supposed to go there? Type of thing.
Yeah.
That's really cool to hear. And then just how the Lord did end up bringing you guys together. And it's funny because I know you're in this environment and you guys are able to use your relationship to display to the college students as an example, but then college students, a lot of times they're like, okay, who am I supposed to be with? How do I know I'm supposed to be with this person?
Yeah.
But Paul tells us actually that it can be better to be single.
Yeah. Yeah.
Opportunities to serve the Lord if we're single. But
That's what every college student wants to hear.
Right. But we do have more opportunities for people who are single than the challenges that come with marriage. But when you are in Christ and you're in marriage, you handle your problems and the challenges that come with marriage so much differently. And so like to be able to bring both perspectives. Okay, if you're single, great, you can serve the Lord. If you're called into marriage, great, you can serve the Lord. And this is how the Lord's going to even strengthen your marriage. So being able to give that perspective to students of both of your guys' deliberation on how to serve him, that's really, really cool and awesome that you get to share that with them on a regular basis. But okay. So now let's transition just a little bit. What tips and encouragement do you have for us for how to disciple or how to evangelize?
Yeah, I guess starting with discipleship, more just things that I have in mind as I'm like walking through that process. We talk a lot about the different components of discipleship, and for us, we kind of just dumbed them down to relationship, word, and ministry. And so, are there things that you're doing to fuel and foster the relationship? Are you spending time in God's word together? And are you doing ministry together? Which, yeah, it's funny because college students are like, I didn't come to OU to do ministry, and you're taking me out on campus and making me do ministry. But they do it. And after the first time, almost 10 out of 10 times across the board, students are like, wow, that was fun and easier than I ever thought. And so the ministry piece, while it's the hardest at first, I think it's one of those things that once you expose students to it, they kind of just run with themselves. But then, yeah, for evangelism, I think for me, just like being present is, I think, pretty big. I think there's a lot of opportunities that we have throughout the days to talk to other people, but I think I get it. It's just a whole lot easier to not do that, and kind of stay to ourselves. And so I think for me, just like trying to be a little more mindful when I'm out that there's always opportunities to do what we've been called to do, to go and share the gospel or look for opportunities to share the gospel. And so, yeah, I think for me, like I try to find places that like I'll frequent throughout the weeks and try to build relationships with, people at those places and obviously get to know them. And for me, it's almost inevitable. The question comes up, what do you do and why do you drink so much coffee? And so, yeah, I get to talk to them about what I do. And yeah, it's just been a pretty cool way to get to do evangelism, I guess, in a more like natural way. So yeah, just lifting up your eyes and realizing that the harvest is plenty.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like a natural environment. I think earlier you used the term organic, and we don't have to
Hmm.
put such a pressure on ourselves. Just look for those organic, natural moments, and that will alleviate a lot of that.
Yeah.
So, what does ministry look like for those college students? How are they taking that piece of the puzzle and going out and doing that?
Yeah. Well, so what we do with them is we just take them out on campus, usually one of the dining halls, and first we show them what it looks like to walk up to a complete stranger, ask them a couple questions, sit down with them, share the gospel with them, and then leave. And then they do it. So we kind of just throw them in on that front. But yeah, it's other things that we do with them, teaching them how to lead a Bible study. A lot of our Bible studies, they have to be student led. We just don't have enough staff to lead every single Bible study. And so students, they love that. I mean, to get to feel a sense of ownership, to get to feel that there's other people that God has brought into their life that they can invest in. It's really fun getting to teach students how to lead a small group and lead a Bible study, and because it forces them to get into the Word too. So kind of take care of two things there. And then, yeah, students, we have a weekly meeting. So students will sometimes speak at that. Students get up and share their testimony at that. So there's quite a few ways we, try to send students out and allow them to do ministry.
Yeah. Well, and with the discipleship and that them leading Bible study, you're teaching them how to lead a Bible study. It's you're just walking alongside them, you know.
Hmm.
And again, you're not overcomplicating it. You're just saying, okay, this is how you walk through the word with somebody. Here's how to ask certain questions, or maybe just let them ask questions. That's practical. And again, it takes the pressure off of this idea of go evangelize, go disciple. Like it should feel almost natural, like you're building a relationship,
Hmm.
friendship. So leadership, mentorship, discipleship, it's all like wrapped up into the same term.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's awesome. Really good stuff. Jake, thank you for coming on. I do want to give you the opportunity. Do you have a final word of encouragement for us, or favorite verse that you want to share with us?
Yeah. I mean, I think just kind of keeping in line with what we've been talking about, just bringing back up that verse in Corinthians, talking about brothers and sisters, continue, be steadfast, be immovable, abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that in the Lord your labor is not in vain. Just fight to believe that, because it can a lot of times feel like your labor is in fact in vain. We're not seeing any progress or fruit or things we want to see. And yeah, I just believe that we will reap a harvest, if we continue to sow. So
Absolutely. Totally agree. And again, thanks for joining us, and thanks for sharing your stories and just your words of wisdom through your ministry experience. And thank you for all you're doing on the college campuses to reach students for Christ.
yeah, of course. Thank you for having me, and thank you, Porterfield, for just being a great partner with us in this whole thing.
Thank you, listeners, for joining us. If you have enjoyed our show and want to hear more, please subscribe wherever you're listening. We long for people of all nations to be reached with the gospel, because John 3:17 says, God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but in order that the world might be saved through him, and we are called to help in that process. We are in the ministry of reconciliation. If God lays it upon your heart, please share our podcast so that people can be inspired and equipped to make disciples and follow Christ as he commands. Until next time, we pray God empowers you as you seek to follow him.